and now you're an RN. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'm going to help you today prepare for your first nursing interview from start to finish, because the application process is just as important as the interview. You need to be able to stand out and shine amongst the competition, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. I'm so excited for you. Let's jump into it. If you are familiar with my channel, hello and welcome back. And if not, you may be wondering, how do I know about a new grad interview process? My name is Jamie and I'm a registered nurse. I have a doctorate of nursing practice and I'm currently a professor of nursing. I have been a nurse since 2006 and I have worked in a variety of different roles as a registered nurse. Two of them were I was a clinical educator in an emergency department, and I ran a new grad residency program, and I did all of the hiring for that, and that was a big corporation of hospitals. And then another role in where I work, I started up a new grad residency program, and so in that process, I had to write the new grad interview process, questions, scenarios, and basically the guidelines of who we wanted to hire and who we didn't want to hire. So I'm very familiar with the process and I'm going to share all of my pearls of wisdom with you. So let's first talk about the application process. So I know most of the videos that are on a new grad residency interview is on the interview process itself, but really it starts before that in the application process. When you're going on these different websites for different hospitals and you're looking for these new grad residency types of programs, there is going to be a list of things that you need to supply in order to get pushed through. And oftentimes, if you miss any one of the steps, you'll just be cut out of the application pool. And you don't want that. And you may never even know why. So make sure that you look through all of the criteria that you need to submit so that you get pushed through to the selection process. And is what I mean by that is they'll ask for things like transcripts, maybe a letter of recommendation from previous professors or peers. They'll want to have a resume, and the resume may even have components that they want, like a personal statement. You may need to have ACLS, BLS, an EKG course. Any of those things, just make sure that you really read the fine print so that you don't get left behind in the selection process. So let's review some of the things that may be required. A cover letter, for example. So since I have been in the role of hiring manager quite a few times, I'm gonna let you know some of the blunders that I see people make that get them cut out of the selection process, which is so unfortunate because then we never even get to meet you. But if you're writing a cover letter, you want to say, who you are, why you're applying for this job. I want to give you a little hint about when you're applying for a job at a certain facility. You really want to make it seem like it's the only facility that you've ever even thought about working at, because that's what the hiring managers want to see. Someone who just really wants to work for us, for our hospital, for our community. So you've got to sell yourself in that way. When you're writing your cover letter though, and if you're applying to multiple different facilities, don't forget to change the name of the hospital and the unit that you're working for. So for example, I was always hiring for Med-Surg Tele or ER, and oftentimes I would get cover letters that were like, it is my dream to be applying for your labor and delivery position. And so then, no fault of their own, I know what it's like, but then I'm seeing they're applying everywhere. They have a dream of working for labor and delivery, so why would they want to work for tele or ER? So unfortunately, then sometimes they wouldn't make the selection process. So I just want you to remember, go through everything, make sure that it is all focused on that facility, that unit, that job that you're applying for. On your resume, the facilities where I worked, we wanted to see a personal statement of some kind at the top. So a personal statement is similar to your objective when you've learned about putting together resumes, which if you haven't learned about putting together resumes and you want me to make a video about that, please put that in the comments and I will. I can have templates for you and how to structure your resume. I have a lot of experience with that. But so the personal statement needs to be sort of like an objective, but more personal in nature. Not too personal, as in, I'm a vegetarian with 3 dogs, but personal as in, what are you hoping to get out of this job? And what can you kind of bring to the table? Now, as a new grad, we know that you guys don't have a lot of experience. If you do, if you've been an EMT before, you've been a CNA before, you've worked for DCSF, or whatever, add that to your personal statement, just a little blurb. But it's short and sweet, and it just gives us an idea that you can construct a personal statement and that you're geared for the position that we're hiring for. So I'll give you a couple of examples from 2 of the resumes that I thought looked rather impressive when I read them over. Okay, so the first one said, new graduate registered nurse with progressive experience in delivering compassionate care to patients across the lifespan. Seeking career opportunities that will incorporate my previous experience in the classroom and field experience in the hospital in a facility where I can grow. Okay, in that personal statement, you see that they want to get hired with your facility and stay and grow throughout their entire career with your facility. So, that's kind of a good one there. A shorter one, but still got the point across, was a compassionate and patient-focused healthcare worker, new graduate registered nurse, seeking a new position in the new grad residency nursing program to support my needs and growth within my community. So those are 2, just to give you an idea of what they're looking for. Short, sweet. What am I looking for? What do I hope to gain? And what will you gain? When I was the hiring manager, I knew that you guys were new grad registered nurses. And so I know you don't have a whole lot of experience. It was okay with me to see on your resume for you to put down your clinicals, that you did pediatrics at this hospital for this many weeks. I was okay with that. I mean, we know that you've obviously completed nursing school and that you have completed those clinical hours, but I feel like it's okay to put that on your resume. But things that you do want to include on your resume for sure is if you speak another language, any certifications that you already have looks really, really good to a hiring manager. So if you already have, well, of course you have BLS because we have to have that for nursing school, but if you already have ACLS or any kind, if you're applying for labor and delivery and you have newborn resuscitation, anything that you can add, an EKG class would be good to have if you're applying for med-surg tele. So just make sure that those are on your resume. And if you are, wondering what you should do while you're waiting to take your boards and getting ready to apply for jobs, take those types of certification classes so you can put them on your resume. And just to kind of piggyback on what I said in the beginning, if the facility requires you to have ACLS or an EKG class because you're applying for a new grad residency position in an ICU, make sure you have that. Otherwise, it will cut you right out. For a new grad residency program, you may also be required to submit your transcripts from school. So go ahead and just put your GPA on your resume if they're already asking for that, because they'll find it anyways. And so if you just put it on your resume, it helps the hiring manager find that bit of information without having to dig through all of the attachments. When you have all of these elements, of course, they are submitted to your hiring manager through the online portal that you applied to. But when you come in for the interview, it is a good idea to bring a portfolio with you, with your resume, a cover letter, references, and any letters of recommendation that you might have gotten from teachers. I'll tell you from my experience, I kept them, and I definitely put a little star next to the people like, oh, this applicant brought this in. But we didn't necessarily save it if you're wondering what we do with those portfolios afterwards, because we do have them all in the portal that you applied to. But professional to bring it in and hand it out. You should probably print out about 3 or 4 copies because it's normally a panel interview, which we'll talk about in just a minute. What should you wear to an interview? I always thought that this was a rather obvious point. When you're going for a professional job, such as a registered nurse, you want to dress very professionally. So that means a suit for the men and a suit of some sort, or a dress for the women. I normally wear the full black suit, navy blue suit, something dark, a dark suit with a shirt. Let me see. So this is what I wore. I'll stand up here. This is what I wore to my last interview. That was for a professor role. So it was a black blazer, a nice blouse, black pants, and wedge heels. I want to say a little something about the heels. If you want to wear a nice pair of high heels to your job interview so that you look very professional, that's great. But I have gone on job interviews in the past where the director of the nursing department wanted to take me on a tour on my interview day. And I can just remember one specific interview. I was dying in pain from those high heels. So just kind of be on the ready for like maybe a little bit of walking is going to be incorporated. So don't make yourself uncomfortable. But yes, so a simple black suit, have on, conservative jewelry. I think the point of dressing this way isn't to be fancy and professional. It is to let your inner personality shine through and have the staff not distracted by, a big loud presentation. And you don't want to wear perfume because that can be distracting too. And some people are actually allergic to perfume. So you don't want any negative association with you when you're in the room with them for that 30 minutes. So just simple makeup, simple hair, a nice professional kind of, boring outfit. When you are selected for the interview, hopefully they'll give you some information about it, but just beware that if you are applying to a large facility for a new grad residency program, that's an actual program that you know about, that's gonna take a year, they have classes and you're in a cohort and all of that kind of thing, which is sort of the new trend right now. Sometimes they will have everyone show up for the interview at 9, and you'll wait in kind of like a common room together, and then they'll call you in every 20, 30 minutes for the interview. If that's the case, you want to just be mentally prepared for this because it can be stressful. And, if you rush to the interview and then now, you don't have any food or anything like that. So just kind of ask some questions like, will this be a panel interview? Is it staggered? So just be ready for anything. Be really flexible on the day of your interview. If you are going to have a Zoom interview, which still happens sometimes, especially after COVID, when people realize like, hey, this was pretty efficient, we could interview 60 people in one day, then do make sure that you are in a quiet room where no one is going to be distracting you. And at least from the waist up, be professionally dressed, okay? Okay, so now we're actually on interview day. And for a new grad residency program type of interview, and even certain nursing positions, you will most likely have a panel of some sort. So the panel that I would construct when we were hiring for the new grad residency program was the directors of all of the units and a staff nurse, so a peer, and the hiring managers. So sometimes there would be up to 5, 6 people on the panel. And so then it's a big panel of people interviewing you and you're sitting across the table from the panel. It can feel intimidating, but hopefully, if the culture is right in that facility, they're going to be warm and welcoming to you. So make sure you kind of feel that out when you go there for the interview. When people address you and they introduce themselves to you, reply back, hi, say their first name. Hi, Jamie, it's really great to meet you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited about this interview today. say kind, excited things like that when you are being introduced to the staff. And so then some of the questions, obviously, they're the typical questions that you hear, but I want you guys to think of this process as really an intrapersonal experience, because when you go through typical interview questions, which I'll link some common interview questions in the description below so that you can kind of have that to look at. But when you are going through the answers to these questions, is what you want to do is read each question and write out your answer. Because when you are faced with these questions in front of this panel interview, it's so easy to freeze up. And so if you can also, you're not going to know all of the questions. Obviously, every place is going to have a different bank of questions, but they're similar in nature. And so if you can have a really dialed in answer to sort of the general questions, then you'll be able to tweak your answer that you had written down for these common interview questions to fit with whatever question they are asking you. So the first one that they always ask you is, tell us about yourself. This is one of those really funny questions, because if you put this video on pause right now and try to answer that question for me, tell me about yourself. That is such a hard question to answer. So this is what I mean about that intrapersonal experience. You're really gonna have to think about, like, what am I and what do I offer for this job? And that is kind of the angle that you want to go with, is who am I and what can I bring to your facility? So it's professional in nature. So again, I used the scenario before, like, oh, I'm a Pisces vegetarian with 3 dogs. That's not what they're looking for. They are looking for your background, what you're looking to accomplish in life, what you have already accomplished in life as far as nursing, school, and work. So you're gonna have to write these things out. So if I was gonna give you an example, you could say something like, hi, my name is Jamie, and as you guys already know, I just graduated from my local community college with an associate degree in nursing. I'm currently in the Bridge program to get my bachelor's of science in nursing. And during my clinical rotations, I just fell in love with the med-surg tele departments. And I just know that that is where I belong as a new grad resident nurse. I applied here to this facility because it is in my local community, and I really am looking forward to serving the population of patients that live here. While I was in nursing school, I was on the Nursing Student Association panel, and I volunteered many hours to administer flu shots in our homeless shelters. So that's a little bit about yourself. They can see that you're caring and compassionate, and that you went above and beyond, just other than just going to nursing school, you also volunteered. So that kind of thing. How can you shine above all of the other people who are applying for this new grad residency program? Okay? So something simple like that. Don't go on and on. Don't go on and on. Some of the questions that I asked in panel interviews had to do with our mission, vision, and values. So before you go to the interview, make sure you research the hospital that you're applying for. What population do they serve? How many beds are in the hospital? What is their mission, vision, and values? And then you're going to want to answer certain questions based on their mission, vision, and values. And an example of that is, if the hospital's mission, vision, and values are all about innovation and high-tech equipment and state-of-the-art treatment, you're gonna wanna answer your questions based on that you want to be a part of an organization that is state-of-the-art equipment and research-based interventions. However, if you're applying to a facility where their mission, vision, and values is all about serving a vulnerable population and serving their community, then you're gonna wanna have your answers be based on that, to give excellent patient care to the vulnerable population of this city. So do you see what I mean? Make sure that you know what they stand for as an organization and model your questions based on that. Many times the question of tell us your greatest strength and your greatest weakness will come up. So these are things that you need to think about before you get in front of a panel interview so that you can kind of know where you're going with these answers. Your greatest strength, is pretty easy to answer because, I'm very motivated. I'm a very kind, caring, compassionate person. You can answer it in a positive manner. But when it comes to your weakness, you want to be able to flip it to a positive. So an example I always use, I'm very competitive in nature. I flip that around to say, sometimes my competitive nature would hinder me because I would be so stressed about being the top of the class or becoming the president of the Nursing Student Association. But then I realized that if I can channel that competitive nature into working towards positive change for myself, so if I'm just competitive with myself and striving to be better than I was the day before, then that is how I look at my competitive nature now. Another common question would be something like, tell us about a time that you were faced with a safety concern and how did you remedy this? I'll just tell you about a blunder that I saw one time, and I think the interviewee said something to the fact that, one time I forgot to put the side rails up and my patient fell, and me and another nursing student ran in and we got them back in the bed and we had to write up the incident report and all of this. And yeah, it was like, okay, you handled that okay, but leaving the side rails down is number one, a safety concern that you don't want to share that happened to you in an interview. Good for that person that they handled it and will never do that again. But, when you're talking about a safety concern, maybe use something like you saw a pump malfunctioning and you tagged it and told the nurse that you were working with. Or so for a good safety concern would be something that you noticed that was a safety concern, but the patient didn't actually ensue harm because of it. You saw something, you went to the right people, you fixed it. Use a scenario in nursing school, maybe that you didn't get along with one of your peers very well in your clinical group. You went to that peer and said your concerns. The peer ignored you, so then you went to the instructor and the instructor met with the two of you and you worked it out. It always has to work out in the end, and going up that proper chain of command. Depending on where you're applying for a job, there may be a question about diversity in the workplace or diversity with patient care, vulnerable populations. So they'll word it sort of like, we serve a diverse, vulnerable population of people here. How would you support diversity in the workplace and our vulnerable population? So this question, you can actually look up this question and find out a lot of different answers. But when I answer this question, I kind of flip it around on, if there's diversity and vulnerable populations in the workplace, then the best way I can support this is to ask, what are the disparities of this community? Where do our patients struggle to get their care? And it would have to be individually based for all the patients and employees that I'm working with as to how I would manage that. There will most likely be a patient delegation question where they'll give you a scenario of 4 or 5 patients, their vital signs, kind of a little scenario of what's going on with each of them, and then you're going to have to repeat back, who are you going to see first? One thing I would recommend is asking them, hey, can I delegate care to my support staff? Because if you have a patient, who is, their call light is going off in their room, and you have a patient who has 10 out of 10 pain, and you have a patient whose vital signs are, a heart rate of 120 and O2 set of 89. Well, of course, you're going to need to see that patient first. So can you delegate for the CNA to go into the patient room to check on the call light because you don't know what's going on in that room? So ask if you can delegate, prioritize by airway, breathing, and vital signs. and you should be okay with that. And then for the new grad residency program, I always created a scenario that we would read to the new grad and then have them walk us through what labs would you expect to see, what treatments would be next. And in fact, here on my YouTube channel somewhere, there's a video called Case Study, and that's the one that I used. Since I don't work at that place anymore, you can probably just view it and there will be no harm there. But that was the case study that I used. And then we would ask them, you know, what do you expect next? What labs are we looking for? What do you think is going on with this patient? What things in their history makes you think that? So I would do that. And if you want to play it safe for this question or this scenario, then just review the biggies: CHF, an MI, sepsis, a TIA, or a CVA. And then you'll have yourself covered as far as what they're going to ask for that kind of a scenario. And then at the end of the interview, they're always going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? You never want to say, no, I don't have any questions for you. So have the questions ready. And you want to have the questions based on the organization. You want them to be able to answer you in a positive way. So be careful with asking things like, do you have tuition reimbursement? Because what if they don't? You don't want them to feel bad about, you know, their answers to you. So look it up. And, you know, kind of do your homework before you create these questions. But some good questions would be like, is there a time frame that I need to work here as a new grad before I can start joining committees? Most hospitals have an education department, so you can ask things like, what kind of support do you have for education, for nurses on the unit? And then always ask the question, what do you like about working here? The last time I did a panel interview and one of the applicants asked me that question, I was like, wow, that's an amazing question, because it kind of threw us off and all of us are looking at each other like, well, I like this about working here and I like this about working here. And it just kind of made it interactive for us too, to think, why do we like working here? And how can we sell this to her? So suddenly we're wanting to sell our positions to the applicant. So that was a really good question. I would recommend asking that. For those questions for them, you know, you don't want to ask about benefits and time off and PTO and when can I switch out of this unit to go to another unit quite at that moment. Wait until you're hired and you can figure all that stuff out after. Once the interview is over, thank everyone on the panel for their time. Then you want to write a little thank you note to anyone's email that you have. And that's a really good way to sort of full circle the experience. And then hopefully you'll hear from the organization and start your job as a registered nurse. Yay. Okay. Thank you, you guys. I'll see you in the next video.